I'm about to rock. It's the KLH Show, starring me, KLH. I'm telling you, you better hold on to something. Let's go!
What's going on, Waterbury? It's me, your man KLH, back in your TV screen, here to save the world 30 minutes at a time. Well, we're back on a new season, and as always, I know you folks out there have a lot of viewing choices. You made this one, and I appreciate you for it. And as always, please tell somebody to tell somebody about the KLH Show and what we're doing here, what I'm doing here, and which is trying to put some real talk into real issues, grown folks talking, you dig? So yeah, do that. And also, if you have any questions, concerns, suggestions, whatever, hit me at the email, KLHOUD1 at Comcast.net. So I want to cover a few different subjects today. You know what I do? I wanted to start off first with a discussion about welfare. Some of the right-wing conservative talking heads on TV and radio have called President Obama the welfare president, stating that more people are on welfare under him than under any other president. And a lot of people feel that the implication of that is to suggest that because Barack Obama is black, that he is enabling other black people to get on welfare. At least that's what the critics of people who make that claim say, and I think there's probably a lot to be said for that. There's been a whole lot of people using certain kinds of talking points and phrases and terminologies to talk about this president in ways that are racist. They don't want to come right out and say, we hate Barack Obama because he's black. So they'll say things like he's a communist, he's a socialist, he's not born in this country. Other ways of making him seem like he's not one of us, which is a way to speak to people who are already inclined to be against Obama and to suggest that we don't want a black man in there. Now, I'm not a person who's always jumping on the race bandwagon. I'm not one who pulls the race card easily, but I think there are plenty of people who are mad that we have a black president in this country. With all that said, back to welfare, people say, or these critics have said, that Barack Obama is the welfare president. And a lot of black folks are offended by that, and I've heard people quote that say black people are receiving less welfare than white people. In other words, the problem isn't black people, it's white people. On the surface, that may seem to be a legitimate argument. I'm going to be reading some things on the show today. Fact, these are statistics, and you can find some variation in the statistics, a point or two, but pretty much any reasonable or authoritative website you go on, the figures are going to be in the same ballpark. With that said, black folks comprise 37% of the people who receive welfare or food stamps. We're talking kind of specifically about that, right? 37% of the people who receive welfare are black. 46% of the people who receive welfare are white. So it seems like their argument is valid. See, I told you, more white people receive welfare than black people. So them trying to portray the typical welfare recipient as a lazy black person is just wrong, and it's racist and yada yada yada. However, you only have to dig just a slight bit deeper to see things a little bit differently. Blacks comprise approximately 13% of the population in the United States. Whites comprise 78% of the population in the United States. And I'm talking about blacks and whites. You can throw Hispanics in there, and you know that adds another layer to this, but I'm talking about black people and white people right now, so save that for another show. Or maybe not. I'm talking about something that's concerning me and other people who are interested in this particular comparison. So, all right, so blacks are 13% of the population. Whites are 78% of the population. Blacks make up 37% of the people on welfare. Whites make up 46% of the people on welfare. So the fact of the matter is that blacks are disproportionately receiving welfare. In other words, if you break it up into the percentage of population that blacks are versus whites, then blacks excuse me, are receiving way more welfare than white folks are receiving. In fact, how it breaks down is blacks receive 4.5 times more welfare than whites, if you were to balance out the numbers and consider it proportionally. Because remember that blacks make up 37% of the population, whites make up 78% of the population. So the fact of the matter is black folks proportionately are receiving way more welfare than whites. 4.5 times more welfare than whites. It's a distortion to say that more whites receive welfare than blacks, because the only reason that is the case is because there's so many more whites than there are blacks. So just by that fact, there's going to be greater numbers, but as a percentage of population versus a percentage of the people who are getting welfare, blacks are 4.5 times more the recipient of welfare than whites. So, what does this mean? Eyes are bugging me. These lights don't help either. It means that there is a problem here in America. There's a problem with how black folks perceive themselves, the position that black folks have in our society, and what we do about our position. I am not a person, as I said, who pulls the race card easily, and anything I'm talking about here is not about bashing black people, but about some real talk so that we can get to some real solutions. If you don't really understand what the problems are, you really can't do anything about the problems. I'd like to share a couple of other numbers with you, and this is regarding households. Now, these are numbers off the U.S. Census Bureau website. These are not some nonsensical right-wing racist websites. These are facts. Households. Of the households that consist of a husband and wife, 51% are white, 28% black. 51% white, 28% black. Of the households that are only a female with no spouse present, 9.9% are white, 30% are black. What does this mean? It means that blacks are a lot less likely to be married. Blacks are a lot less likely to even have two partners in the household. And blacks are a lot more likely to have their households run by a single woman. So again, it begs the questions. what does this have to say about black people? Are black people just naturally lazy? No. It's an absurd notion. It's an absurd suggestion. Are whites superior to blacks? Of course not. And so we have to look deeper into why this is happening. We have to address these issues because these facts affect all Americans regardless of our racial or cultural backgrounds. When blacks are receiving welfare in the numbers that they are, somebody has to pay for that. Which means anybody who is a taxpayer is paying for these welfare checks. So we all need to be interested in it. But when it comes to blacks, I think that we have to think about choices. I've talked about choices before, and I'll talk about it again across a range of different subjects, but choices are what determines where we're at. Now, I'm not going to say that racism in this country plays no part in the status that black folks hold in this country, because it's not true. I am 52 years old, old to some people, young to some other people, but I'm 52 years old, and it has been only within my lifetime that the Civil Rights Act was passed. It was passed in 1964 by President Lyndon Johnson, and that law, or those set of laws, outlawed or banned discrimination against blacks in public places. Coupled along with that, I believe it came along a year later, was the Voting Rights Act, where blacks could not be required to do more things in order to register to vote. So it balanced things out. My point is that it has only been within my lifetime that the United States had a fair set of laws for blacks. And we know that a lot of the history of the United States is a wicked history. We like to go over in other countries and talk about how they should do this, that, and the third, but the fact of the matter is we have a wicked history in this country. Early settlers came over and stole this country from the native people and then banished them to some horrible reservations, and then with slavery went to Africa and forcefully brought over people here to slave to build this country up and to build the economy of this country up in the early days. All of that kind of wickedness has a legacy that has only really been dealt with in a meaningful way within my lifetime. That's how recent it's been. So it absolutely plays an effect that black folks have not been given a fair shake in this country until recent history. So there's some validity to the saying that, well, it's because of the man, right? There is some validity to that. And so we have to look at whether that is still the case. Eyes are killing me, sorry. Whether that is still the case and what we can do about it. So we all know that there have been affirmative action laws passed. The Civil Rights Law was passed. The Voting Rights Act was passed. So the laws are in place. The problem is that the legacy of the discrimination and the persecution of blacks still lingers. And simply because laws are changed doesn't mean people's behavior will change. Now, I am not saying that we still live in a time of the 1950s. That is not the case. Things are exponentially better, and if you have the ambition and you are willing to make the right choices, you can do great things in this country. That is true. But sometimes, depending on where you're born, who your parents are or were, or who your grandparents are or were, has a lot to do with what you believe are your real choices in this world. For example, if your grandfather or grandmother and your mother were both on welfare, there's a greater chance that you will be on welfare because that's what you know. That's the environment you come up on. Now, you may live in the same world as somebody who didn't come up through welfare and whose parents worked and made a living and provided for their families and etc. But if that's not the reality of what you see around you, then you are still shackled by the effects of your environment. No pun, well, pun intended. Our environment has so much to do with our perceived reality, and your perception is everything. If you believe you can't do better for yourself, then you won't try to do better for yourself. You live within a very limited space, and your possibilities are very small. If you believe that anything is possible for you, then the world opens up to you. And that's where we have to start thinking. We have to start busting out of the mental restrictions, the mental boundaries that have been around so many minorities, black folks in this country. And we have to start helping each other, start helping each other to see a newer, bigger reality. When we do that, we can start to see some real changes. So no, black folks are not at all inferior to white folks in any way. But we have to realize that we are operating under a different reality than white folks. Black folks come up through institutionalized repression and oppression and persecution. White folks never had to deal with that. And I like to give an analogy of a board game where you have, say, a black player and a white player. And for years and years, the black player was held back and the white player is up 20 spaces. And then laws are changed. And the implication is that, okay, we're now even because the laws have been changed. Fact of the matter is that the white player is still 20 paces ahead, and even though both can move forward now with equal speed, white folks still have a decided advantage even today in this society. So again, what do we do about it? And get into it a little more. So what do we do about it? Again, I just want to chip away a little bit more at it, at this subject. And it's not about me feeling like, well, I have all the answers and, you know, who do you think you are? You're bashing your own people. This is about provoking thought, hopefully provoking some conversation for you folks out there to solve what is obviously a problem. Just by the numbers, it's not a matter of opinion. There's a problem. So one of the things when it comes to welfare is that we have to want more for ourselves. And even if you're a white person on welfare, there's a large number of Hispanics on welfare as well. We have to want more for ourselves, and we have to believe that it's possible to get more for ourselves. We have to look to people who are where we want to be rather than looking at people who are suffering just like us. That's not going to get you out of a rut. It's going to get you out of a rut by seeing beyond where you're at, by seeing possibilities. You can read, you can talk to people who are successful. These things, these kind of associations are very, very important. Another critical thing is education. Now, education, again, is something that, unfortunately, because of the history in this country, black folks have been behind the ball historically, there it is, and continue because of the legacy of the persecution and repression back in the day. Because of that legacy, black folks are still behind. Now, I looked up a report. I'm going to do a little more reading. This is from MSNBC, who did a report on the disparity between black and white students. And it says that reading and math scores are improving for black students across the country. The problem is that the gap between reading and math ability is still really bad, because not only are black students improving, but white students are improving. and it says more black children are living in poverty, which is linked to a whole bunch of problems like low birth weight, exposure to lead, hunger, too much TV watching, too little talking, and too little reading at home, and less involvement by parents at schools and frequent school changing. African American students are less likely than their white counterparts to be taught by teachers who know their subject matter. They're less likely to be exposed to rich and challenging curriculums, and the schools that educate them typically get less state and local funding than schools that have predominantly white students. A huge percentage of minority students lack the simple skills they need to function in society. Only about half of black and Hispanic fourth graders perform at or above basic reading tests. This is a problem. What can we do about it? Parents have to decide they will not accept it anymore. Parents have to decide that they are going to demand quality education from their students. Parents should be at every single PTA meeting there is. They should be at every board of education meeting there is. They should be demanding quality education for their children instead of sitting back as if they have no power. The only reason you have no power is because you've accepted that you have no power. It is critically important to make sure that you get involved in the educations of your children. And this kind of links into what I talked about earlier, how so many black families are run by a single woman. Back to choices. Women have to make better choices in their mates. Because a guy says, yo, you fly and this and that, that shouldn't mean now you got 2 kids with him. Women need to do better jobs at choosing mates. That means they have to do better jobs at who they have sex with. This is real talk here. You can't just have sex with a guy because he says you're fly. You can't just have sex with a guy because he got some slick things to say to you. You have to demand more from a man. You have to demand more for yourself. You have to be responsible and recognize that sex leads to children. Too many black women have accepted that I'm just going to get pregnant. The father is not going to be around, or if he is, he's only going to be around part-time. Too many black women have accepted that they can't get married and that their future is going to be one of scraping by while they watch their white counterparts thrive. This is craziness. It's about choices. Black women have to make better choices and they need to learn how to check a guy's resume. And they might say, well, you know, these jerk guys, these stupid guys, you know, they're running these games on us and this and that, and you know, they make you think they're one thing, they turn out to be something else. And to that I say it's a lot of bull crap, man, because women are accepting the roles of being victims. They're saying in so many words that I'm not smart enough to be able to tell if a man is going to be a good father, if he's going to be a husband, or if he's just going to play me and get some and then keep on moving. I happen to think women have the capability to be plenty smart enough, but they're just playing this role of victim. It's like they're playing a role of being stupid. And of course, this doesn't apply to every woman, but it applies to way too many women. Women need to make better choices about who they're having sex with, because sex leads to children. And if a guy has not established that he can be an outstanding father and an outstanding husband, you need to reconsider who you're getting laid by. Word up. That's real talk from man KLH. However, men aren't off the hook, because there is no excuse for men being stupid either. Men get away with it because men don't have to bear children. Men don't get saddled with that responsibility. Men can walk away from it. And if you walk away from it, you're a scumbag. First of all, if you walk away from it, you're not much of a man. You might be a man because you're over 18, but that doesn't make you a real man. Men need to stand up, and real men need to start setting examples and talking about it. And it can't be like a cool thing that, yo, I banged this girl last night and you know whatever, I'm just gonna wash my hands of it. That can't be the thing. We have to want more for ourselves as a people. And when we want more and when we expect more, we'll get more. People tend to live into their expectations. If you expect to have a great life, most likely you'll live a great life. If you expect that it's going to be hard, most likely that's exactly what you get, is a hard life. We got to change things, man, and we can change things. But it starts with the choices that we make and our expectations that we have for ourselves. And even more important, man, the expectations that we have for our children. It has to change, and it can change. So I want to encourage you all to get yourselves together. I almost said something else. So we're at the end of the show. If you have any questions, concerns, whatnot, hit me up at KLHOUD1 at Comcast.net. Leave me your feedback. I'd love to read it on the air if I get some. And you know what we do. We got to get our drinky drink on. I'm going to go back to old Mr. Jim Beam Black. We're going to do that. And again, please sign that petition. Is so very important. And we can get, the petition is about getting live fact checkers on every presidential debate so that we force them, both Obama and Romney, to tell the truth in these debates, because right now both of them are guilty of not being honest with us. Live fact checkers will force their hands, and this should be something everybody should get behind. May I live to be 100 years. May you live to be 100 years in a day. Peace.